Today's episode of Inside the Numbers Sports Performance Podcast is an awesome one, guys. I've got on guest Coach Jeremy Frisch. And if you don't know Coach Frisch, you should follow him on social media because he is the long-term athletic development model. He is the guy when it talks to, when you consider things like developing young kids to have a foundation of movement literacy that are eventually going to pay dividends down the road that kids just don't get in society today. This episode is jam-packed full of golden nuggets as far as how to set things up or what a good mover is, how to implement these things with possibly your situation as a coach and, utilize it in a warm-up, small-sided games, and things of that nature, and just the importance of doing it that will eventually raise the ceiling and broaden the floor of your athletes so that they can become the most robust athlete and realize their potential. I love this episode. This was the first time I got to actually speak to Coach Frisch. I've interacted with him on social media countless times, and it was an awesome conversation. I hope you guys enjoy this, and we'll see you on the inside. Welcome to Inside the Numbers, the Rock Daisy Sports Performance Podcast with your host, Coach Cody Hughes. Join us to unlock the secrets behind athletic performance as we break down the metrics and transform your collected data into powerful, actionable insights. Tune in for exclusive interviews with top coaches and professionals who are revolutionizing their training programs with data. If you love what you hear, please share it on X, Instagram, and YouTube, and tag us at RockDaisyAMS. Welcome back to Inside the Numbers Sports Performance Podcast, brought to you by Rock Daisy AMS. I'm your host, Cody Hughes, and today I've got on Coach Jeremy Frisch. Coach, what's going on? What's going on in your world, man?
Oh, not much. Exciting times. Fall. Football's in the state playoffs, and gym's busy. I can't complain.
Sure thing, man. Sure. So, I've been following your stuff for a long time, and I just see how passionate you are about youth development. It's just something that you've become kind of a forefront on. I'm thankful you decided to start posting about it and everything. But how did you land on that specific niche of wanting to develop the youth in a way that we so desperately need in this society?
Yeah, so it went two ways. I was a college strength and conditioning coach, and I was, working with all these different teams. I was at the College of the Holy Cross. And I kind of felt like, I think I had 15 or 16 teams, that I was working with. And I kind of felt like some of the athletes that came through the door, I couldn't help them. It was almost too late. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It was almost like, oh yeah, we could get them stronger and stuff, but there was that thing missing, that athleticism, that coordination, that balance, things that they just sort of missed out on, whether they're, didn't get exposed enough to it or they just played one sport, which is totally, happens. And so I sort of started I don't want to do this. I need to work with younger athletes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's where I started looking into opening my own facility, start working, with high school age kids and younger. And at the same time, my wife and I were just starting to have kids. So I got,
man.
So we have 4 kids, and I can still remember taking my oldest son to the doctor, and the doctor being like, if he doesn't hit this movement milestone soon, we're going to have to take him to a specialist. He's not he's not rolling over and doing this and that. And I'm like,
yeah,
all right, well, I'm a movement guy. I'm going to figure this out. So I went home and I started just rifling through development books, starting from literally day one.
Yeah.
Day one. What do you do with, what should you be doing with infants, toddlers? So it was kind of each end of the spectrum. I have my own children that I obviously started to realize I want to make sure that they grow up to be good movers and coordinated. And, because beyond sports, when you see kids who are, who have those qualities, can move and, they're coordinated and balanced, they do well in school as well. You know what I mean? And they're calmer. And there's a whole bunch of things that happen when you allow kids to be kids and move and learn how to move. Right. So, and then at the other side, the performance side, I was working with, college age athletes. And I was realizing that there's more, I could do more. I could help these kids more if I started working with younger kids. So one summer I just started working with, I had the summer off from working at the college. And so I started working with high school kids at a local gym. And by the end of the summer, I was like so busy. I was like, I'm not going back to the, I'm done being a college strength and conditioning coach. I'm just going to work. I'm just going to do, open my own facility. So that's kind of how it happened. And then from there, I sort of just started working it down. Like, I was like, all right, high school kids, like I can do this with them. And then, we started getting inquiries about middle school kids. And so that's how it's kind of how it's developed. And at the same time, like I said, my kids were growing up too. So
Right.
fast forward all these years, I got a senior in high school. He's a big boy, big strong boy, and he's going to go play college football next year. And I got another one that's
awesome.
a sophomore. Yeah, so that's been like my little experiment with my kids. All these things I learned, and I had to try it out on them. Yeah, so it's been great because like when they were growing up too, like they brought their friends down, and that's how like our youth program really started. Was like first my kids came in, and then their friends came, and then it kind of exploded from there. And I just kind of got really into it, like just exploring what's the best ways to do this. What are the best? What So that's where you see all the crazy exercises and stuff. It's just me kind of screwing around in the gym and coming up with stuff.
Yeah.
So
from an outsider's point of view, sometimes when you see your videos, you think like it's just pure chaos. Like you're just throwing crap out there. Like he's just getting kids to play. Like he's a built-in playground. But that's not the case. Like there's got to be some systemization to it. So I want to hear more about your system and what you see, starting with those really young kids, and like maybe the difference between a kid who has a robust like movement literacy versus a kid that doesn't, and why that's important, like how that system of what looks like chaos, how that's developed, and if you were to explain it simply, what it is.
Yeah. So, the whole, like, I didn't make it up, right? The long-term athletic development model, that's not something I made up. I got from, but when you look at it through through the system, or from the beginning to end, it's just kind of guidelines on what you should be doing with each age group. You know what I mean? And the earliest ages, it's fundamentals with the FUN capitalized, right? And so there, like, you want chaos. Like that's the time. Like your training should eventually become more systematized and become sort of more like things will come together. Kids will be in lines, stuff like that. But at the beginning, it's very chaotic. Like that's how it should be, because that's the way kids operate. They're explorers. They love to try things out. They hate waiting. They hate standing in a line, and you know what I mean. They hate they hate that stuff. So you've got to figure out, like, it's organized but unorganized at the same time. It's organized knowing that because I know what they need. Right. So I organize my thoughts and set up the gym I set the gym up in a way that works for them, not for me. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
And I think that's one of the things that happens with some coaches that work with young kids. They set the gym up and set up their activities for them and not for the kids. You know what I mean?
That's a good point. Yeah, I see it in my 5-year-old, like my 5-year-old wants to never stop. He wants to climb up on things and jump off all the time, which I battle with my wife. I'm like, don't deter that, like that's a good thing. Where it's hard, I think, for an adult to see the inside if you don't study it, like understand like how the brain of those children are working. Do you think that's a big mistake coaches make?
Yeah. I think sometimes it's and for some coaches, right, it's not their fault. Like they know what they know, and they know who they worked with. So if all you've worked with like was older athletes, and then one day you get say you work at a facility and like, oh, you got to take the youth group today, and you never worked with those kids before, like you just don't know. You know what I mean? So I think for me, that's what I've been trying to do over the last few years, is like getting all that information out, like, because I know that youth athletic development is kind of growing significantly. So I think that, like, I want to just get it out there for coaches to understand and learn and be able to take some of the tools some of the things that I do and feel like they're confident going into a session. Right. So it's like, because I'll tell you what, like I've seen like seasoned coaches that worked, like they interned in college and they worked with high school kids, and they came down and worked with me, maybe interned with me. And I gave them a group of 10-year-olds, and they were like wide-eyed and like nervous. I'm like, dude, you work with like college guys, like, like you got to win them over more than anyone. Like how can, so it's funny, like if you're not prepared to work with the younger kids, like they're going to run all over you. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So at the earliest ages, you know, anywhere from ages 5 to 7 or 8, like it's very chaotic, you know, but it's, so I set up, but I set up the gym that way so they can run from like, activity to activity. You know, you keep the rest periods short. Like you tell a kid, it even happened to me last night. Like we had a 5, 6, 7-year-olds in here and I was like, needed to change what we were doing. And I'm like, go get a drink. And they literally sprint to their parents, take one sip of water, and they run back out and they're right back in your face. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I need like 2 minutes to set this up. So, you know, the earliest ages, like I said, it's sort of like you just got to make sure that everything's flowing and everything's moving. So they're engaged the whole time. And then as you get older, right, the kids like 8 to 10, 11 age range, they're like mature enough now to understand like simple games, you know, like small sided games, or like you can make up games. They like that stuff. They love the competitive nature of the games. They like, you know, being able to just figure out stuff and the variety of games that you play. They love that. And obviously they're a little bit stronger and they're a little bit older. They're like you know, entering the end of elementary school to middle school. So, you know, in school, there's more expected of them too. They can stand in line longer, you know, things like that. So you can start to explain things to them. You can start doing certain drills or activities that, like, in the back of your mind, like, you know, that will benefit them later on. You know what I mean? Like any type of like sprint drill like that, but I always make it fun where we're chasing each other or chasing a tennis ball or, you know, timing them, things like that. You know that, like, you know, we don't really care how fast they are right now or what their running form looks like, but you know that, like, just exposing them to sprinting really hard is really good because, you know, down the line, we're going to definitely explore those things, you know? Right. So it's sort of like, there's always that, like, what are we going to do right now to make it fun for them and make it enjoyable? But what are we also going to do right now that we can kind of parlay that into something later on when they get older and more mature? Because I'm always thinking that, like, I always want these kids who are 7 or 8 to come back when they're 11 or 12, you know, to come back when they're 13, 14, and 15. You know what I mean? Yeah. So as the years go on, things just get a little bit more organized, and, you know, they get a little bit more, sort of like complex. You know, you can add more things to it, add more layers. That's you can go from like when I talk about like strength training, right? Like jumping off a box for a kid, you know what I mean? That's like great strength development for a young kid. Like that's 100%. What if you ever see kids, like they always will, if you give them an environment at the playground, they'll jump off stuff all the time. You know what I mean? They always want to challenge themselves. So like when I think of like strength training, like climbing on a bar or hanging from the jungle gym or any of that stuff, like that's for a kid that age, 5, 6, 7, 8, that's strength training. Whereas like, you know, maybe an 11, 12, 13-year-old, we're doing goblet squats and inverted rows, you know what I mean? And things like that. And maybe for a 15, 16-year-old, you're deadlifting. And so for me, it's just like this big continuum of exercises, you know, just depends on what works for that age group.
Gotcha. So I'm curious to know how you convince parents, because like I know that parents are crazy, you know, and some of them don't know what they don't know. So like if you bring, obviously if they're coming to your gym maybe on a referral or word of mouth, you know, as a young kid, you know, I'm thinking like, you know, pre-middle school, you know, or somewhere in there. And I mean, obviously I feel like you got to be pretty clear with your messaging, because like how do you express the development is happening, or how do you show, you know, like their results are happening, or demonstrate the value when it's hard to see that at that age?
Sure. Yeah. I think in my case, we live in such a small town. I know everyone. Okay. Everyone knows what I do. Everyone's in the community. They know like the things that I like I'm after with the kids. Gotcha. Like they, you know what I mean? So, and they also know that like a lot of people will read the stuff that I write, whether it's on emails or like they'll read my Facebook pages and stuff like that. Like a lot of the community know that, like,
you've built up a lot of trust in this community.
Kind of, yeah. And education too. Like I write a lot about like what kids should be doing when they're age, you know, 4, 5, 6, you know what I mean? Right. So I feel like that's what made it grow over the years, is just getting the word out there to people of what we're actually doing. You know what I mean? Because we're really not like, tested anyone yet, but I just know, like, when parents come in, I'm like, the most important thing you can get your kid to do is become a good mover, for any sport. And these are the things that we're going to do. And a lot of times, even if the parent might not get it or might not be 100% on board, when the kid does the class and has so much fun,
the experience will help drive them back.
The experience
for sure, and they'll end up getting it, right? Yeah.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yep. And then so we just go from there. And like I said, it does get, as the years go on, it does get a little bit more organized. You know what I mean? Like I had like last night, I had a group of kids that were the younger kids, but then I had a group of older kids that are like 3, 4, 5, grades 3, 4, and 5. And that was their first night coming back from. We don't get a lot of younger kids during the fall because everyone's out doing fall sports. But once the fall sports are over, they come in. So it was their first night doing that. And like these particular kids I had the year before, they would just come in and start running around. But last night I actually sat down with them, had a little chat. We did a little warm up with like some hops and skips and things, almost like some stuff you might even do with like some high school kids just before like a speed workout. You know what I mean? And we did some of that stuff, and it was it's refreshing to see kids get older. It's refreshing to see them like listen, and whereas like the year before they definitely were, they definitely were listening. It's amazing too when they make that transition to like our school system is like grades 1 through 3. No, sorry, grades 1 through 4, and then you go from the elementary school to the middle school. It's grades 5, 6, 7, 8. That jump that jump to 4 to 5 when they go to the school, and now they're just in school with like these older, bigger kids. It's amazing how much they like mature. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just by seeing it and being around it. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's pretty cool. So I just love that. I love the transition. I love when I get a kid that maybe is like sort of, and it's not all the same across the board with kids, with every kid, but like I love when a kid transitions out to say he gets to be like 11 or 12, and now he's like ready to start sort of almost getting into like your middle school, like junior high type programming, right? When you can start teaching them strength training and maybe getting a bar in his hands or a kettlebell or anything. I love that stuff. I love that transition. I love giving them the tools because right there, if you get them really good at that stuff, sky's the limit when they hit puberty if they stick with it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think
for sure,
even with like my 2 older boys, just by being around the gym so much when they were kids, they always would jump in and do different things. And by the time they were like 11 or 12, like they could front squat, they could like organize their spine to set themselves up in like an RDL or a deadlift. The older one could freaking do a clean when he was like 8, just because he was like always here because he's the oldest, right? So he spends the most time down here, and so when like they hit that growth spurt and he kept at it, they just put muscle on and it's just, how it is. You see it.
For sure.
When you get a high school kid who gets dedicated and he can do the lifts well, it's just like they're putting weight on week by week. It's wild how much stronger they get. So I love that. I love looking at the whole thing, but I love the transitions too. When I get a kid from going from this sort of stage to the next stage is a lot of fun.
For sure. So you talk about, you said there's nothing more important than a young kid becoming a good mover. And I feel like that term gets said ad nauseum in the coaching space, but I don't know if many coaches can actually define it or what good movement looks like. So if you were to break down your analysis of what good mover means, like if you were to teach me what your viewpoint of that is, what is it?
So there's a really great book from this guy, Joseph Drabik, out of, I think it's translated Polish text. And he goes into, it's also in Science of Sports Training. I don't know if you ever heard of that one either. It's a great book. There's a section on coordination training, in those books. And you're looking at, overall coordination. You're looking at different elements of coordination is just not like this one global thing. It's multiple different things. So obviously, static and dynamic balance, right? Can you simply get a kid to balance on one foot for a length of time, and then also being able to like balance on one foot, but then move the rest of their body? Can you shift your weight forward, backwards, side to side? Can you stick your leg out, arms overhead, things like that? So same thing too on the ground. Like when I look at a kid bear crawling, does he look smooth? Like, is his butt sticking up in the air? Is he swaying side to side? Like that to me there's some dynamic balance there as well. So that's one of them. like kinesthetic differentiation, which is like, picture like you and I are like 5 feet away and you're going to throw the football at me. You wouldn't throw it as hard as you can. You're going to put touch on the ball so I can catch it. Whereas like if we were 30 yards away, you're going to zip it at me. Right. Yeah. So it's like that kinesthetic sense of how much force you use in a certain situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. That's a good one. Like, it's a great way to teach that with kids. Like, put a line on the floor and you're going to ask them to jump. Say you just put them like, 3 inches away, but I need you to jump and land on that. I need your toes to land on that line from 3 inches away. They're probably not going to jump as hard as they can. They're going to use a certain amount of force to get them there. And so you see that a lot in sports, like, again, like, picture like
pacing, and you need to know, like, a big thing with game speed you hear today with like Tony Villani and these guys of like, football specifically, like, Max V was like all the rage for a while, but it's like, sure, like, but you've got to harness and know when to use a certain amount of speed for whatever that environment asks you to do. Like
100%.
Angles, speed, you've got to make a decision to, like, because you're trying to achieve a goal and you've got a moving target trying to keep you from achieving that goal, and your brain's got to be able to solve that problem, and then it's got to translate it into the body to express whatever it is that's needed to solve that problem. And I guess if kids don't have that experience of like, all right, I've jumped myself literally 3 inches and I know exactly the amount of force to do that 1,000 times as a kid because I just naturally had all these exposures, so the brain just knows. So like application of more complex skills has a greater foundation.
Sure. Yep.
That's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, it's perfect. You've said it better than I ever could. It's that's exactly it. So we do a lot of that where like I'll set up a bunch of cones and have a kid with a medicine ball. And obviously the closest cone, you don't have to destroy the cone. You're just going to give it a little touch, but the furthest one, you're going to have to put some force behind it, so you can change things. Like instead of using just a med ball, you can use multiple balls. You can use a tennis ball, a med ball, frisbee, so each one of those things, you're going to put a little bit different force into the ball. Right. So that's one of them. Rhythm, you hear about rhythm a lot.
Dude, this is such a good one. Like, it's funny you say these because we're going through these and I think they're amazing, but like, it's so refreshing to hear, like, because I always hear like, not that this is untrue, but like things like rhythm and coordination are just gifts.
Yeah.
Like they can't be trained. Like you either have it or you don't.
I mean, I can tell you kids, maybe they're just kids and they're not very coordinated and they just naturally get better. But I've seen kids like come in here like falling over, like they can't walk in a straight line. And then a few years of just being exposed to different things, and then also getting into sports. They're different kids by the time they're like 11 or 12. Like it's almost like So if you can teach a kid, like if people say rhythm is this inherent thing, then why do we how can we teach kids to play an instrument? Like
like I know my dad's a musician, so that's why I have such an in tune to that. And my wife makes fun of me all the time because I'm very sensory. So like, and so is my son. So like, I'm constantly hitting things and very sensory and musically inclined. My dad's a musician and he taught me how to play. But my dad was like, you do realize that like that's not really all that special. That like it's like 85% of only like 15% of people are truly like tone deaf. Like as far as like rhythm and like hearing tones, and like that's why like in church and stuff, like a lot of people can teach people how to sing 4-part harmony, or can teach singing, can teach an instrument. Like it can be taught. You've got bands in every single high school, guys. There's so many kids playing instruments.
100%.
It's a very good point.
I'll tell you what too, it's funny. Let's talk about instruments. Like our school band, it's amazing from game 1 to game 9 how much better they get every Friday night. Yeah.
Oh man.
Like last game, we were in the playoff. We had a playoff game last week, and we always sit next to the band. We always like sit right in the middle, and like someone turned to me and like, dude, they sound better this week. And I'm like, they've literally been getting better every week, you know? So it goes to show right there. Yeah. You know what I mean? It goes to show right there that you can learn rhythm. And then I always loved, like, I was a track guy. I ran track in college for a little bit too. And like our coach used to make us do all these, like, hop, right foot hop 3 times, left foot hop 3 times, right foot hop 2 times, or these like different type of skips where you go from A skip to B skip to skip for height, like right in a row, so you're like changing with different rhythms. So I
Yeah.
love that stuff. We
Yeah.
do it. We'll do it in
Awesome.
here with a kid. Like I'll put like 3 mini hurdles on the ground and then leave some space, and then maybe 4 mini hurdles on the ground, leave some space, and they'll go like step over the hurdles right into a side skip, step over the hurdles again right into a like high knee run, whatever. But like we're changing. Not only are we doing like these like sort of rhythmic movements, but we're changing the rhythm as well. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So
for sure.
yeah, so I love that. Um, and then I think there's obviously a little bit of like when it comes to being a good mover, the kid obviously needs some strength, right? But
Okay.
not strength that you think like, oh, this kid's like crushing barbells and stuff. It's like,
There you go. Like defining strength now.
yeah,
That's
defining
an
strength.
interesting conversation.
You know what I mean? So it's like for a kid, when I see a good mover, like can they get off the ground? Like, do they have the ability to even like get off the ground? Do they have the ability to like land or be able to land and break a fall? So that gets into like being able to like probably a little bit of kinesthetic sense as well, like being able to roll or like move your body, in space a little bit. So that one's a big one too. Like that when I look at kids like strength, like I have like this like kind of physical competence assessment where you like just look at the ground level stuff and like I'll get a 5-year-old or 6-year-old in and ask them to do like a Superman for like 20 seconds. Can you lift your feet off the ground and your arms off the ground? Do you even have the strength to do that? If you don't have that strength in that, maybe you shouldn't be playing T-ball yet. I don't know. Or like, you know what I mean? It's like, can you hang from a bar for 10, 15, 20 seconds? Those are things that kind of base level of strength that I like to see because, can you bear crawl for 10 yards or 15 yards without like sort of falling apart or having to stop? You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, yeah. So, that type of thing. Speed, I like, not every kid has to fly. I've had kids who are slow pokes when they were young and end up flying when they got older because they were able to put this kind of coordination thing together and then get stronger on top of it. So, but yeah, so and then there's the other part of it is like, I think Vern Gambetta said it. He's like, I can't really define exactly what like athleticism is, but I know it when I see it.
Sure. 100%.
You know what I mean? So there's that factor too. Like you just see a kid, not every kid that comes through here, but there's always a kid. I got a new kid last night and I'm like, wow, that just kid's, he moves well. That's probably the genetic side that you see. That kid who can start to put it together early on. So yeah, so those are the things I would really, look at when I'm saying like we need to be good movers.
So do you have any involvement? I know you said your son is a senior, playing football.
Yep.
Do you have any involvement? Like, does the high school have in your community like strength conditioning or some type of program or whatever?
We don't have an in-school one.
Okay.
I help out in the summer. I'll go up there. I usually run instead of doing weight room stuff because our weight room's not great. I do like the whole summer. I'll do like all the speed and agility work.
Okay.
And then a lot of the kids just come to my gym. You know what I mean? So we get a lot of the kids in there, but it's still usually, we're still in the dark ages when it comes to getting a dedicated program and having and then on top of that having like a lot of kids come and take part in it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So yeah.
The reason I ask is just because I'm trying to. I want to see how you would suggest someone that does have like a dedicated strength conditioning program that because a lot of times the weight room is just where the massive focus is, weight room numbers, can you get your squat up, can you get your bench up, very specific numbers or performances based off of lifting weights themselves. And that's really it. Yep. If you were to give some tips to a coach that wanted to sprinkle in, some of these movement principles that you've studied and you've used at your gym, what ways can they do that?
I think with older high school kids, what I usually try to do is sprinkle that stuff in, like in warm-ups in the beginning of their sessions. You know what I mean? From like even like if say I had a group in the summer, like the first thing we would do is getting on the field, and I would be like, all right, we're gonna balance on one foot with like knee up, like almost like a running position, right? Like You know what I mean? Like
a sprinter
arms,
pose.
yeah,
deflection,
kind of a sprinter pose,
deflection,
yeah. And I'll be like, all right, let's hold this for 30 seconds, and you'd be shocked that most kids can't hold that for 30 seconds. They're either falling over or their knees dropping.
Yeah.
You know, they're losing focus, and then you know, so we'll go from static, and then we'll go right to dynamic, where we'll go like kids are on the ground on their belly, and we call it get up to balance. So I'll be like up, they get up as fast as they can, whatever way they want, and they go right into that sprinter pose, hold, you know, and then we'll do the same thing where we'll go like, you know, get up, balance, but I'll have their eyes shut. And then then I'll just keep adding layers, right? I'll be like, all right, get up, balance, eyes shut, hop, you know, get up, balance, arms overhead, hop, hop in a circle, hop, you know what I mean? I can, like, the high school kids are totally cool with that, doing that stuff, you know what I mean? Because I make it sound sexy and I'm yelling and, you know, like, whereas like if I had like younger kids, I'd be like, you know, kind of playing with them a little bit. So like they'll buy into it because that's like kind of their mindset, right? Yeah, so we'll do that, and then from there we'll go from more like movement type stuff. So we'll do lots of like different crawls. I'll put them like they'll do like you know, backwards bear crawls, lateral bear crawls. We'll partner up and do like bear crawl, tug of war, stuff like that. You know what I mean? Or they'll hold a PVC pipe and do like a bear. You know, so we're getting those patterns, we're getting those things in there, like forcing them to like, you know, be on 4 points crawling or 3 points balancing, or, you know, fighting each other, push pull, things like that. So I add that, and then we even get more dynamic, like the old like football butt rolls. Like I love that. I used
the
to
old
hate
school
it
like mat drill.
Yeah,
like butt
like
roll. Yeah.
butt roll, and then like maybe bear crawl 5 yards, and then do a shoulder roll, get up and sprint. Like I love that. You know, linking movements together. So we'll do a lot of that stuff. And then you can even add another part, like, you know, butt roll right, butt roll left, bear crawl, forward roll, get up, sprint at me. I'm going to point, you're going to react and go left or right, you know? So then now you add that reaction thing too.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think the best time to add those sort of kid stuff is in your warm-ups. Don't ever let those things go. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Don't ever,
that's true.
You know, whereas like that might be for my 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds, that stuff that those kids just did, the high school kids just did in their warm-up, that would be their workout.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then we would take that, we would do that stuff, and then we would finish the day off with like a game. Whereas the high school kids did that stuff as a warm-up, and then we're going to go into more specific, like, you know, acceleration or top speed, or, you know, change of direction or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So,
right. Yeah.
So I think you can still use that stuff throughout the whole thing. I've done it with college kids as well.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Yeah, you know. Yeah. So it's definitely worthwhile, I think, to keep it in a program.
I got you. Yeah, that's. I mean, the big key too, like you said, was buy-in, like finding a way to express yourself as a coach to get them to want to do those things. And you can keep the warm-up fresh with those items too, I think, you know, rather than just doing the same old mundane, you know, a skip, butt kick, Frankenstein, whatever, go lift, you know.
Yep.
Because that's one thing I'm really trying to open my eyes more to, is just the deepening of the athlete, you know, and trying to study things of like I'm watching basketball right now, and like watching our guys, the ones who have the ability to solve these movement problems, you know, like following guys like Sean Mishka, you know, and Emergence, and like those guys are just, he explains it on a much deeper level, which is I'm still trying to grasp.
I can't. I've told him before. I'm like, dude, I can't. I don't get it.
He's so sciencey, man. It's insane, like how smart he is. But it's but it's hard. It's not that palatable for me at the moment. Yeah. So I'm trying to make it palatable to where you can digest it down to sport. Because, like, you know, I want to get him on this podcast at some point, so maybe I can pick it out of him a little bit.
Sure.
You know, to where it's like high school coaches can understand. Like I'll give you an example. I think as strength coaches at the high school level, like if I can try to convince our sport coaches that some of, like, because they hold the key to move. They're the ones that are actually prescribing so much movement. Sure. You know, I'm doing a lot of, I have so much time to physically prepare these kids, but as far as like doing sport movement, like we had a basketball coach he's in year 3 now, and he's awesome. He's unbelievable. He came from the college level, first high school head job. And like in our off season, like I have a game that I love to play. It's med ball, ultimate frisbee, but in a gym. So it's a 4-pound med ball, and you usually play like 5-on-5, just like basketball, but the goal is to score a touchdown by the baseline. But it's also basketball rules, right? Like if the ball in ultimate frisbee rules, if the ball drops to turnover, it never stops. You keep playing, and I love that because there's a lot of basketball principles in it. But it's also like the guys are gassed and they're also solving problems. He didn't like that at first. He was like, "We're just goofing around," and I'm like, "You gotta see it a little bit deeper." So, and I finally got him around to it like this year, and I was like, "Do you not see that like we've got rules that you can't bring out a basketball and work on defense?" But do you also see where like the guys that understand space better, that know, all right, I've got somebody threatening to score versus who's approaching me, where to place my body, like those type of awareness of space. Do you see how that can be valuable? And he was just like, I never looked at it that way. I just thought we were playing some stupid game. And I'm like, yeah, like that happens all the time.
Yeah.
And it's really, to me, it's really easy. And then he actually is taking that on, not because of me, but he also has seen it from a lot of other basketball coaches. But like now I'm at basketball practice, and almost all basketball practice is purely small-sided game based off what you're trying to accomplish.
I love it. I love that.
And like leverage defense, leverage offense. You know, we're trying to accomplish a certain task in an open environment where you've got to make a decision, and then you pick your open constraints or close your constraints based off the weak points of our team. And I was like, yo, this is next level stuff. Like this is much next level stuff that I never truly realized, you know, until I paid attention to it. Because I remember when I was playing in high school, man, it was like layup lines and go over your plays and then run suicides to be tough and then go home. Like that was literally our practice.
Same. Yeah, it's funny. You know? We have this game we came up called Powerball. And so like you have basically we played 5-on-5. And so you have five scorers go against 5 defenders, but the defenders have to cover 6 places to score. So we have like 6 boxes. Ooh. Yeah. So you have 6 boxes spread out and only 5 defenders. So like they have to figure out how to, as 5 guys have to cover the 6 boxes score.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was having trouble teaching my football. So I coached youth football, and I was trying to teach my guys how to zone block, and they weren't getting it. Like, I'm like, you got to go to your area. Like you're going to step to your area. And if we're going to your right and someone goes by your left, you can't follow him. Like that's not your job. And they couldn't get it. And so we used this game so they understood like how to shift their zones back and forth, like because they had to cover these, different areas. And so did it work like perfectly? No, but it did get the
it's a cool concept though. Yeah.
Right. So we play it all the time. I mean, I'll send you a video of it.
Yeah, please do.
But it's just great because like you got 5 attackers against 5 defenders, but you can score in 6 different places. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you really have to shift weight, and so what happens is you eventually just get kids crossing right and left, and there's just so much chaos going on. And again, same thing. It looks to the layperson, it looks like there's nothing happening, but there's so much magic happening.
Yeah, and the kids probably compete their tails off, which is the magic sauce, right?
100%.
Like the stimulus being so potent because of the intensity that comes from wanting to win.
Yep, and you only have 30 seconds to score. So each kid's got 3 balls.
Oh, really?
So you only got 30 seconds to score. So you have like a safe zone where you have to always go back and get your ball, and then you can attack. So once you cross that line, you can get tagged. If you get tagged, you lose your ball. So you got to hustle. Like you got to try to score, and then you got to get back to your spot, get the next ball, and go. And you only have 30 seconds. So it's wild. And then you switch, right? So offense goes on defense goes on offense, and then you get after it. So it's a great game. And
yeah, dude, I want you to send me a video of that. I definitely want to give that a go.
Yeah, the kids will love it. So, you're right. Any of those type of like games that you can manipulate and sort of like teach a certain skill or a certain type of like certain type of like tactic that you'd use in a game. Yeah. I'm all for that. I love that stuff.
Yeah. So there's one concept that I've always wrestled with as far as this goes is like expression versus development. So like, it goes also down to the thing of like, can practice be considered conditioning? Like practice isn't enough to get conditioned for the game. It's not specific enough. Okay. And then, all right, let's take it to like change of direction. There's so many camps now of like closed change of direction drills that a lot of coaches really love. There's some camps that go, it's pointless because there's no external stimulus. That's not true agility, which is that's a stupid argument. We know that, but is there value in still doing, like with young kids, like who are so uncoordinated, like just, the freaking footwork ladder, man. Like people want to demonize the crap out of it, but I feel like if it's the same concept of, can I jump my body and jump 3 inches on the dot, the amount of force I need? Can I put my foot where I want it with, like, okay, I don't have a speed constraint. I'm not, like, somebody's not chasing me that I got to like get to the ladder and I've got to accomplish a goal. But like teaching, you see a lot of change of direction. There's so many change of direction, agility concepts and programs where you learn a crossover step or, a shuffle or a side step or a plyo step, jab step, whatever. But then you try to do it inside of a game, inside of a chaotic environment. Like, do you see value in needing both?
Yep. So I can tell you, like, I used to love the ladder, then I hated it, and I liked it, and then I hated it again. And, and I'm kind of like, now it's like, I've worked with so many different people and like different athletes over the years. Like, it's just another tool for me now. I think like I can use when I want to, or if I don't, like, I was like, what am I, why am I saying I hate this and I'm never going to use it when I can probably use it sometime? And so just another tool. So who cares, right? I actually really love using like lead taps, like low box stuff. You know what I mean? Like I like that stuff because same thing. And like, can you like go across this box and put your foot in the right spot to be able to push yourself to go another direction, right? And so, and then from there you can make it as complex or add pieces to it as much as you want. So it's just like anything we were talking about. It's like the get up to balance thing I was just talking about. Like you can start off with the most simple move, and then you can add pieces to it, right? So, I would probably side on the camp of like the more like let's just get kids in like reactive drills and have them like. But I also love like task oriented drills. Like okay, I want you to run 10 yards and pick up that tennis ball and run back to me. A lot of times when they go and pick up that tennis ball, it's like almost like the tennis ball puts them into a good change of direction position. You see good angles, right? And they don't even, without even them realizing it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
yeah, that's like an external constraint, like an external
right
setting in the environment so that it'll set them up for success rather than trying to tell them internally, like, I'll set your angles, set your shins,
Right. I think that's probably my biggest beef with that. Like when working with kids and you try to teach them by talking to them, it's hard. Like they don't understand what you're saying. You know what I mean? There's so much better like feeling than anything, right? So anything you can do to put them in the right environment to feel what you want them to get done is probably easier than saying like trying to coach them. You know what I mean? So that's, I mean, it's really like, if you look at the kids in here, like we set up an obstacle course for the younger kids, like we're setting up the environment for them to like go through and figure out and explore so they become better better all around movers because they get a bunch of different opportunities to try to move different ways. Right. So so I was always like, I remember that hit me like, it's probably like 15 years ago, we're doing a drill with that drill, like sprint, pick up a ball, run back. And I was like, oh my God, they look perfect when they change direction. I'm like, so stupid. Like I'm trying to teach all this like stuff, I also like, I think it's Vern Gambetta. I think it's Vern. He used to have this like sway drill where like you put the cones out and like you set yourself up in athletic stance and you're just going to sway to the right and sway to the left. And sort of just, you start to get that feel of like how it feels to, kinesthetically, how it feels to like be in that low position and where your weight shift goes back and forth. And again, and you can make it more complex and start to move in those positions and things like that. So yeah, I've done that stuff for years. And I think it's great. Like I said, I think it's so funny you brought up the ladder, because I just said I loved it, hated it, liked it. And now I'm just like, all right, well, I'm going to stop. I used to bash it and now I don't anymore because it's like, it's just another tool that I can definitely use at some point. And the kids love it too.
That's right.
that's the other side of it too. Kids get pumped for it.
Well, it's the same concept of like, if you're asking to paint a wall with a hammer, it's never going to work. Like, you can be pissed all you want, but if you're using a ladder to get the eyes and feet in space warmed up in a warm up and it's not bothering anything, great.
Yeah,
if you're making this claim that it's making you into, the next Barry Sanders, you're a moron.
Right.
Like, that's the difference. And
I love it.
I had to learn that too as a young coach. I mean, I'm still young, but like, it's just a tool. It's just a tool in the toolbox, and trying to find whatever tool needs to be presented for that situation, and that's coaching. And that's what makes coaches special, and that's why coaches will never get replaced by AI. Like, there's a lot of people out there that sell a bunch of snake oil. I mean, that's for sure. That's painting this like they're using the language of sports specificity, and I'll help you train like a pro. Things like that parents just fall into major trap. Like, I mean, I guess you being in a small community, you kind of have a hold on that for the most part because you've educated, you've laid the groundwork. But do you ever see that popping up anywhere like where you're at?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it happened a lot when I first started coaching too. Like, well, there was the big like, CrossFit, like when that first came, like when it first started getting big, there was definitely like, many places with unqualified coaches. You know what I mean? And it killed me because like, like these people didn't do an internship. They didn't, like I drove across the country to do one at Stanford. You know what I mean? And like,
for sure,
didn't make any money and worked a lot of freaking hours and, that stuff, so I sort of felt like I did my time. I feel like I did my time and I spent a lot, and then that come like, and you got like these people trying to teach Olympic lifts that just learned them on a weekend certification. No, now CrossFit now all the crap kind of dropped off. Now you have some elite coaches, right? The ones that are still around. You got some elite coaches that really know what the hell they're doing. So I don't want anyone to hear this and get mad.
No, I'm with you.
That I'm bashing CrossFit.
Agree.
So, but I've definitely ran into that, way back. So, but it's like, it's funny. He's like, you hit the nail right on the head. You can't, like, AI can't take over training athletes because, like, when you walk in here any day, like, even my son, like my second son, like, he's not a good squatter. Like, it looks painful. Yep. And you need a human to notice that and be like, all right, well, his big lift is like, he does like, Bulgarian split squats or elevated splits, that for him, it's way more comfortable and he can use a fair amount of weight. Whereas my older son, he's a straight meathead. He's like, I'm squatting, like he loves to squat heavy, back squat. And I'm like, great. You're made, like you have the body type that can do that. You know what I mean? Right. So coaching is still alive and well because every kid that comes through the door they're going to have tweaks where you're going to have a human eyes and brain to make those changes for sure.
So as we wrap up here, I always ask coaches these two questions because I think it's pretty thought provoking. The first one is like, over the time that you've been coaching in your career, has there been anything that you've really changed your mind on?
I would probably say, well, yeah. I would definitely say like way back, like when I was like reading all those translated Russian texts on weightlifting, I was like, weightlifting's it. Like clean and jerk, snatches, like if you don't do that stuff, you're just wasting your time. You know what I mean? And then obviously now, some kids I have Olympic lifts, some kids don't. I think there's lots of ways to get more powerful. You know what I mean? Dove into like West Side stuff. That was big when I was first coming up. So I learned that. And then on top of learning about Olympic weightlifting and then, really diving into track and field stuff. And what do they do? They do lots of stuff out in the track where they do plenty of plyometrics and jumps and throws. So I think the biggest thing I've changed is like, as my knowledge base has grown, like I'm not so stuck on one thing. Because when I first started out, I was like, I was Mr. Olympic lift. And then actually for a little while, I was like Mr. Powerlifter, and then I was like, and then you figure it out as you go. But that was probably the biggest one. Like there's just, every person's different. Every athlete comes through the door, may not be able to fit your perfect mold that you think they should do. So you're going to have to find other ways to do things for sure.
Yeah. I feel like that's such a common answer, which is typical with coaches. I mean, I would answer it the exact same way. I had an end all be all but the deeper you deepen your knowledge, you realize like, okay, there's a lot more to this than just being like, hey, you saw something be effective for you when
Right.
you were a kid. Like when I was in college, this worked for me, therefore this must be the answer. That's such a common like journey. I feel like
Sure.
you go through.
Yeah.
Anyone
Anyone who's put their time in, you hear that answer. They've been around the block.
That's right. And then the last question is this: like, what's currently like got you like your curious light bulb going off? Something that a rabbit hole you're going down, or something you're currently studying and trying to learn more about?
Oh yeah. So I tend to be like an anxious guy, just by nature. Like
Okay.
I'll wake up and be anxious. You know what I mean? Like I'm not,
Yeah,
but I'm not worried about anything. You know what I
I
mean?
can relate to that for sure.
Yeah. I just really what I need. Like at the end of the day, what I really need to be doing is getting up and just start moving right away.
That really
but I
helps.
can't. Yeah, and I can't.
Yeah.
But I can't always do that because I got the kids. I'm getting them to school and blah blah blah. But anyways,
Yeah.
so I know the biggest thing for me over the past couple of years is like just getting into like learning how to breathe, like breathing.
Okay.
Like I didn't know that I was like practically hyperventilating all day and like sighing all the time, and like I just don't notice that stuff. And then I started looking into it just on a whim, and like meditation and Eastern philosophy, like
Okay.
that stuff's
Cool.
got my brain. That stuff's got my brain going. Just and then with that, like, oh, okay, well, how we could use those techniques to like, I before football games in college, I would be near vomiting.
Yeah. Yeah. Just so anxious.
Right.
But
like,
once you had that first pad hit,
done.
it was gone.
Right. So, but like to the point where like, like everyone's like, I just like everyone would be rah, 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 like, getting before the game, and I'd be off on the side. Like,
Oh boy.
I have pictures.
Here we go.
I have pictures where I'm like literally sick to my stomach, and I'm like, why is everyone so excited?
Yeah.
And then I would stand on the sideline, and I used to return kicks and punts in college. I would pray that the coin flip that we didn't have to return the kick because I didn't want to return the kick. Right? Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
And then all right, we're kicking off to them, and then I'd be like, all right, I hope they get over the 50 so I don't have to return the punt. And then I'm like, but then the first play goes out and you get thumped and it's all gone, and you don't think of any of that stuff.
Yeah, interesting.
But so the meditation and like just the mind stuff and the breathing, just if I had those tools when I played, I could have probably calmed myself down and saved myself a lot of sort of mental suffering.
Yeah, love that.
You know what I mean? And I love that those tools. If I could teach a kid those tools when they're younger, they're going to use those tools like when they become a parent, when you're freaking worrying about stuff all the time.
Oh, man, I
You
can
know what I
relate
mean?
even hard. I mean, like I'm a young parent, man. I've got a 5-year-old and I've got another one on the way.
Yep.
And I'm also dealing with a 5-year-old who has developmental delays. So like I'm kind of in that same boat of like like just trying our best. Me and my wife both trying to put our son in a position to succeed and learn and grow. And I try to tell people like I don't think you really know worry until you become a parent. Like man, like it's a different level of worry, and then you have to have some type of faith to understand like we're doing our best. Like we're all doing it. Like we don't know what's best. There's no manual to this thing, man.
No manual.
Just figure it out. And trying to connect to my kid in a way that meets him where he's at, rather than trying to force my own perspective onto him, which is something I'm really worried about, Jeremy, seriously, because I'm such a competitive guy, but I've been a coach at the high school level now and pushing 10 years of coaching, to where I've seen such bad, like not bad parenting, but like just, I guess, toxic situations where parents are living vicariously through their kid. And like, it's different seeing it from a third party as a coach, but like when you become a parent, like I feel like I need to guard my heart, because I don't want to sit here and act like I'm going to be unsusceptible to that.
Right. Yep. No, I hear you. I think for us, I tell my oldest now, like, I'm like, dude, all I wanted you to do is just have some friends. And like, because we used to notice like some of his buddies like were faster or whatever, and like he was sort of trying to figure things out. And it's funny, like, his dad being anxious, he was a really anxious kid. He would literally lock on my leg, and we couldn't get him to do any sports or anything because he would just be nervous about it. You know what I mean? And so we were like, dude, like we just wanted you to go out there and run around and make some friends and have fun. You know what I mean? And I'm like, look at you now. You know what I mean? And so I think for me, approaching his childhood or all our kids' childhood from that angle of like, just go have fun and let it, I let all of I let all the stuff go that like I wished, oh, well, he's going to be this amazing athlete or whatever. I sort of let that stuff go and we just went and just had fun with it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
For sure.
I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is with football, but like I actually tried not to get them to play. I'm like, I'm gonna let them have their own journey. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then they'll figure it out. And then of course it just sucks you in. He got sucked in, I got sucked in, and now we're back. It's back to those things. But that's us. That's kind of how kind of things are in this like small community. You know what I mean?
Thing. Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
But
well, hey,
so you got one on the way.
I do. Yeah,
that's awesome. I love it.
Yep, another boy. So I'll have 2 boys running around.
Great.
So which is great. We'll have a little bit of an age gap just from pregnancy was really tough on my wife, and he'll be my second son will be born sometime into March, and then my first son will turn 6 right there in June. So a little bit of an age gap, but excited to go on this journey of finally going from 1 to 2, because I was an only child, so I have no idea what this is like. My wife, however, is one of 3, so she gets a little bit more than I do. So
cool.
Excited for this challenge.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Good luck. It's the best. It really is. It's like what's that toughest job you'll ever love? You know what I mean?
That's right.
So that's where it's at. Great.
Thanks, man. Well, sweet. Well, hey, I appreciate you just coming and hanging out with me. Obviously, we'll have a lot more questions. I really want to see that Powerball video. That's next level. I definitely want to introduce that to our teams. And if anybody has questions or anything from anything we said, or if they listen to this and want to reach out and ask more questions, how would you prefer they reach out?
They could probably you could do emails. Great. JeremyFrisch@gmail.com is probably the easiest. You know what I mean? And I send them out. I might not get back to you right away, but I will definitely return your any questions, anything we talked about for sure.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, thanks so much, Jeremy. I really appreciate you coming on, hanging out.
All right. Have a great day.
Thanks, man.